An overwhelming majority of Americans agree the nation's democracy is in trouble, but Democrats and Republicans seem to be living in two separate realities when it comes to what, and who, is putting the country at risk, according to the latest PBS NewsHour/NPR/Marist poll. 81% of U.S. adults say the future of U.S. democracy is under threat, a sentiment shared by most Republicans, Democrats, and independents. But when they were asked which party poses the bigger risk, it was a statistical tie between people who said the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. An additional 8% of Americans blame both parties for playing a role. "We have one point of bipartisan agreement that the ship is sinking," said Edward Foley, who directs the election law program at Ohio State University. "But the problem is that each side blames the other for the ship sinking." Chart by Megan McGrew/PBS NewsHour. As a handful of states hold key elections this week and the nation heads toward the 2022 midterm election cycle, Americans' varying confidence in the mechanics of democracy suggest the consequences of years of divisive politics, misinformation, and attempts to restrict voting. "Our democracy is at risk, and I'm very worried about that," Foley said.
For months and with no evidence, former President Donald Trump maligned secure voting systems, such as mail-in and drop-off ballots, and attempted to lay claim to an election he did not win. His own Attorney General, William Barr, said there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 election. Elections officials called it the most secure presidential contest in U.S. history, but Trump's words still ring in the ears of many of his supporters. In this latest poll, about two-thirds of Americans say Trump has made these claims about the election simply because he didn't like the outcome. But a third of U.S. adults, including three-quarters of Republicans and 26% of independents, say Trump is mostly right in his continued calls that the election was rigged. "It's really worrisome that we have this degree of misunderstanding of basic facts of the democratic process," Foley said. Chart by Megan McGrew/PBS NewsHour. Despite some people's misgivings about voting integrity, 7 out of 10 Americans trust their state and local governments will conduct fair and accurate elections going into the 2022 midterms, and say they will accept next fall's election results, even if their candidate loses. But within those numbers, political lines re-emerge. While 88% Democrats said they would accept their candidate's loss, the percentage fell to 53% of Republicans. While an overall minority of U.S. adults, 37%, say they have lost confidence that their state or local government would conduct fair and accurate elections, that number was notably high among certain groups. 60% of Republicans, more than a third of white Americans, and 41% of Latinos said they felt that way. In contrast, 43% of Americans said they now have more faith in the electoral process, including 55% of Democrats and 59% of Black Americans. These broad trends of voter confidence distributed along racial lines have been echoed elsewhere. In a January 12 survey conducted by the Pew Research Center, 88% of Black voters approved of how the 2020 election was administered, significantly more than 68% of Latino voters and 53% of white voters.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe